Insight-Nexus-News report, November 10th, 2024. Hello, this is Michael with Insight-Nexus-News, bringing you a thought-provoking look into the complex world of global arms sales, the influence of weapons manufacturers, and the unsettling connections between war, profit, and power. Today's topic will dive into the history of arms trade and explore evidence suggesting that some conflicts might be perpetuated or even ignited, not by geopolitical needs, but by profit motives. This is an eye-opening look behind the scenes, where hidden motives often shape the world around us. Before we get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this report to help others understand the hidden forces influencing global events. A brief history of weapons manufacturing and sales. The modern arms industry is a behemoth. Since the early 20th century, arms manufacturing companies, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and BAE Systems, to name just a few, have become immensely powerful, influencing not only economies, but the policies of entire nations. The arms industry didn't start at this scale, of course. Early weapons manufacturing, while profitable, was more localized, with smaller workshops supplying limited amounts of firearms or other weaponry to regional governments. However, the industrial age transformed these small-scale operations into major enterprises. By the time of World War I, arms manufacturing had grown into a globally significant industry. Companies profited immensely from the production of everything from tanks to airplanes to munitions. Following this, World War II only solidified the position of arms manufacturers, as governments worldwide sought to build massive arsenals. However, the influence of arms manufacturers didn't stop at supplying existing wars. As peace became less profitable than war, arms companies began to seek new ways to maintain demand, even in peacetime. Conflicts fueled by arms deals, historical examples. Throughout the 20th century, allegations arose suggesting that weapons manufacturers were influencing or even instigating conflicts. One famous example comes from the 1934 Nye Committee hearings in the United States. The committee, led by Senator Gerald Nye, investigated the role of arms manufacturers in dragging the U.S. into World War I. Their findings indicated that certain industries and banks, which stood to profit from war, might have actively encouraged America's entry into the conflict. The merchants of death, as they were termed, were shown to have considerable influence over foreign policy through their ties to government officials and financial contributions. During the Cold War, arms sales to both NATO allies and opposition countries, often indirectly, became another source of controversy. In some cases, companies would sell arms to both sides of a conflict, increasing their profits regardless of the outcome. One stark example involves the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, during which Western companies were found to have supplied both sides. While Iran was under embargo, arms still made their way into the country through covert deals, resulting in ongoing violence and a steady stream of profits for arms suppliers. Modern-day concerns, a never-ending demand for arms. In today's world, military expenditures are astronomical. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, reported that global military spending reached nearly $2 trillion in 2022. The influence of arms manufacturers on policy remains concerning. For instance, in the U.S., it is common for retired military officers to join arms companies or become lobbyists, advocating for policies that increase defense budgets and, consequently, arms purchases. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing hold lucrative contracts and have vested interests in shaping U.S. foreign policy. This phenomenon is so prominent that it has been described as the revolving door between the Pentagon and private defense contractors. Arms manufacturers are also heavily involved in lobbying. In 2022 alone, reports showed that the top 5 U.S. defense contractors spent over $60 million in lobbying efforts aimed at increasing military budgets. This lobbying frequently pushes for aggressive foreign policies or military aid packages that contribute to destabilizing regions, leading to demand for more weaponry. The disturbing trend of dual deals in warfare. An unsettling aspect of arms sales is the practice of dual deals, selling to both sides of a conflict. The modern arms market has seen examples where companies sold arms to countries engaged in conflicts with one another. While not always direct, these dual deals occur through third parties or under the radar. For instance, investigations revealed that during the Syrian civil war, weapons produced in the U.S. were found in the hands of opposing forces, including Syrian rebels and groups allied with the Syrian government. These arms transfers were facilitated by complex networks that ultimately traced back to major arms suppliers. The dual strategy is disturbingly efficient. Selling arms to both sides of a conflict ensures that profits remain steady, regardless of who wins or loses, and that a state of constant conflict, and thus constant demand, is maintained. Economic dependency and the cost of peace. One might think that governments would favor peace over war, but in some cases, peace can actually be financially inconvenient. Countries with large defense budgets and a substantial arms industry are in part economically dependent on this industry. A sustained period of peace could result in reduced demand for arms, lower production, and job losses, especially in regions where arms manufacturing is a significant economic driver. Take, for example, the U.S., where military contractors employ hundreds of thousands of people. An extended period of peace could mean layoffs, which would create political backlash and economic instability in regions where these companies operate. The importance of these jobs allows arms manufacturers to exert additional leverage on politicians, often framing increased military budgets as job creators or essential for national security. The role of media and public perception. In addition to lobbying, arms manufacturers have occasionally influenced public perception, framing militarization as a necessity or even a patriotic duty. News organizations with ties to arms manufacturers have at times presented conflict as inevitable or justified, increased defense spending as a requirement for safety. This portrayal shapes public opinion, creating a population more willing to accept militaristic policies that ultimately drive weapons sales. One of the challenges in addressing this issue is that public awareness is often limited. Reports linking conflicts to arms sales rarely make mainstream headlines. Investigative journalists and nonprofit organizations like Amnesty International have attempted to shed light on these issues, but public awareness remains relatively low. Conclusion. In summary, the complex relationship between war, peace, and profit is a reality in the world of arms manufacturing. As we've seen, from the historical merchants of death in the early 20th century to today's billion-dollar defense contractors, the influence of weapons manufacturers has shaped policies, driven conflicts, and in some cases, potentially prolonged wars to ensure profit. It's important for us as citizens to stay informed, question the motives behind military engagements, and demand transparency from our governments. This is Michael with Insight-Nexus-News. Thank you for joining me in this important discussion. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share to keep others informed. Together, we can push for a more peaceful and transparent world.